What an amazing venue. We thought it was very appropriate, given that we're talking about awards, obviously. And we also know that the PR industry has a particular fondness for awards, so we thought choosing Valentine's Day for a bit of a love-in seemed like a nice tie-in as well. So thanks for giving up your Valentine's morning for coming along today. We've got 4 fantastic speakers lined up today. Let me just introduce them. David Gallagher is Senior Partner and CEO for EMEA at Ketchum and also Chairman of the UK agency. Mickey Haynes-Sanger is MD of Golden Goose PR. Emily Morgan is MD of Red's Life Division. And Nick Dunn is co-founder of Unity. So we all know that the PR industry is awash with awards. I was doing a little calculation and there's something like 11 main industry awards. There's lots of other sort of vertical sector awards as well. I'm sure there's probably lots more as well that I've missed off. And I know anyone who's had to pull together an award entry knows how time consuming it is. They also cost a small fortune usually. But the power of winning an award is obviously immense. It's good for business, it helps strengthen client relationships, and obviously the winning team gets, a massive boost. But obviously competition is massively hot, so standing out is really difficult. And what we're really hoping to do today is give you some motivation, some inspiration, so that when you're writing your next award entry, you will put together something that's really going to catch the judge's eyes. So the plan for today is I'm going to have a chat to David, then the 3 ladies are going to run through their award-winning case studies, and then there'll be lots of opportunity at the end to ask questions. So if you've got questions as we're going along, just save them, and there will be ample time at the end. So as I say, I'm going to have a chat to David first. Let me just give you a little bit of background about David. He's got more than 20 years PR experience, both as a client and senior agency advisor to some of the world's leading brands and companies. He's also president of the International Communications Consultancy Organization. And importantly, he was jury president at last year's PR Lions at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. So today, he's going to lift the lid on what went on in the judging room, which all sounds very, very intense. So David, thanks so much for joining us today, taking the time to join us. So firstly, for people in the room who may not know all the ins and outs of the Cannes Lions, can you just give us a little bit of context about how it all works and how many entries there were in 2013?
Yeah, so it was easily the most intimidating professional experience I've had. I knew that the PR world would be scrutinizing every winner and every loser. People came to me after the ceremony and said, "Why didn't my campaign win something?" So I knew there'd be a spotlight on it. But I also knew that there were 1,300 entries that we had to review. So 1,300 actually were reviewed multiple times, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But each one of them had a team behind it. And in fact, as a jury, we talked about the fact that of those 1,300 teams, about 40 would go home with a piece of hardware. And those 40 would be ecstatic. And it would maybe make their careers. In fact, I'm sure they all have it in their CVs now, and it's usually on the bottom of their email signatures. So we wanted to make sure that they were proud of the work that was represented, but we wanted to be fair to the 1,250 or so losers, because it's something that they needed to learn from, and hopefully they'd be inspired and come back for further years. So we felt like it was a big responsibility to take each piece of work seriously. But just to kind of frame how the competition works, there were about 2,000 entries submitted to Cannes in the PR category. About 600 were taken out because they were either in the wrong category or incompletely entered, or perhaps not financially paid for by the time the competition started. So we actually looked at 1,300. There are 20 judges from around the world, 3 from the UK, 3 from the US, and the other from
and you were president of that jury, so you were coordinating.
So I was technically not American or not British in that setting. I had a non-voting role until the last few rounds. But so before we even arrived at Cannes, we reviewed, all the work was reviewed by 3 different judges 3 different times and evaluated on a 1 to 10 scale. 400 were removed before we even got to France. So we only looked at 900 as a jury. The jury met for 5 days, 4 nights in small groups. So every piece of work was evaluated in a small group setting as well, so that not one person could dominate the discussion, and every piece of work got ample attention. In the last 2 days, we took it to a short list, took a 2/3 majority vote. This is a 20-person jury, all different personalities. You can imagine the politics, dynamics in the room. And we didn't finish each day until the voting was done that day. So many times we didn't leave the voting room till 11 or midnight. And then on the last day, we awarded the actual hardware, the goals, and we picked a Grand Prix. And on that day, we didn't leave the jury room till about 1:30 in the morning, with the press briefing the next morning at 9. So it was an intense, but I have to say, uniformly fair process. And I think in the press conference afterwards, I talked to one journalist. Fairness doesn't always mean justice, so not everybody is happy with the output, but it was an eminently fair process.
What I hadn't appreciated was that all you know is the client name and the country that the entry comes from, so you don't actually know the agency that's done the work.
You don't know the agency, you don't know whether they're a PR company or an ad agency. I think one of the big debates during Cannes, especially with the PR competition, is that the ad agencies tend to outperform the PR businesses. That was true this year as well. About 70% of the entries ultimately were from ad agencies, 30% from PR. Although proportionately, we pretty much held our own. I think we were about 30% of the winners. Most likely to win are those that are combination ad and PR agency entries. So I know some of the winners were actually co-submitted by ad agencies and PR agencies.
So the process is, or the submission is a 2-minute video. Is that right? That's the award entry.
There's a written summary, there's a board, kind of a poster board, and a 2-minute video, which are mandatory, and then you can supply supplemental material. My advice is leave the supplemental material out. It's not really reviewed by the jury, unless there's a question about the authenticity of the work. The video is key, and I think the video puts some people off from entering. We've debated that outside of Cannes as an industry group as well. And my argument is that the world is now driven by video, and if you can't tell your story in 2 minutes in video, you're probably not, you don't have a great story to tell anyway. So I think it's actually a good discipline for us to be able to describe our work in 2 minutes. What I would say about the video, having seen other competitions, the PR work in past years suffered because our video production wasn't as good as the ad agencies. At Cannes, that wasn't the case. There was no discernible difference, and because, as you say, the entries are not labeled, you don't know who's producing what, so there was no discernible difference between the ad agencies and the PR agencies. So I think we've come a long way. The other thing about the videos is that they tell the most important part of the story, not the whole part of the campaign. Sometimes as PR people, we want to say, the client didn't give us very much time, and we didn't have very much money, and we tell our own personal stories and not the actual story about the brand, and the video gets distorted. So if you tell the brand story, what you did, how you solved it, and what the results were, and you do it in 2 minutes, you have a much better chance of winning.
And overall, what do you think the quality was like of entries last year?
Well, the quality was extraordinary. Out of 900 that we looked at on site, there were a few losers, just obvious could be thrown out. But there were a few winners that popped up very early. Your work popped up very early as one that was a consensus choice. So I thought the quality was remarkable. One of the great benefits for me was to be inspired by work. My judgment was more than whether it won a line or not, was I wish I had done that. And there were more than a few times that I really wish my agency had done that one.
But you said actually you've learned lots of things through this process as well that you'll be taking back to Ketchum for this year and for other awards. Yeah,
we did pretty well, if I can be slightly immodest. We won 9 Lions this year. I think we won more than any other agency, if I can say that. 7 in PR and 2 in any other category. So we have a pretty good machine for identifying work that's likely to win. But I definitely learned a lot in terms of how work is presented and what really pops in a jury room. And I guess my main piece of advice is that this is a 5-day process. If the jury has to guess what the client is or guess what the big idea is, it's probably not going to survive. So I think it's just like basic PR. You got to tell the main parts of your story at the very beginning of your entry, and hope that it survives long enough to be discussed over the 5-day process.
So there were just 3 UK winners in the PR industry. Would you have expected more, or did you think that was quite a good number?
I think it's fine. We were talking earlier, but people kept asking me, why didn't my country win more, or my holding group win more, or why don't we win more in this category? There really wasn't a pattern. I think the UK agencies showed nicely. They were probably overrepresented on the short list, and then I think came about where they should have in the actual winners, and you've got some of the representatives here. So I think the UK industry looked good. I think if we want to do better, we have to take the competition more seriously at a national level like other markets do. Australia did very well this year. I think there are a couple of factors. Great work comes out of Australia, really some creative agencies there. I think some clients are braver in Australia. They'll let work take place there. It's in English, so it's a good test. If it works there, it might work here, it might work in America. If it doesn't work, maybe people won't see it, so they can be a little braver. But they also organize as an industry. So many agencies come together, they share tips like this, they give ideas on how to produce the video, they judge each other's work to identify possible winners early, and then you see it in the actual competition. So they have their own qualifying heats to get into to Cannes. Sweden does that, and I think Brazil does that as well. So as an industry, we might collaborate a little further if we want to see a better showing on the night.
Do you think the UK industry sort of has this habit of beating itself up for not having won a Grand Prix and not really winning too many awards?
It's not just the UK. I think as an industry, as a global industry, we have to be the most insecure group of people in the world.
That's why there's so many awards.
So we have so many competitions, so everybody gets a trophy. But if you walk around Cannes, it's not the same with other disciplines. The advertising people, the digital people, social people have a lot more swagger, and I think that we could learn from that, and maybe particularly in the UK. I will predict that. I've made this prediction before, but I gave myself a two-year window. I'll make it a one-year window. I think a PR agency will win the Grand Prix this year, and we'll stop beating ourselves up.
Brilliant, brilliant. So obviously you've mentioned PR entries are competing with entries from advertising, other creative agencies. I mean, what do PR people need to keep in mind to make sure they stand out, given that there's, all you get is the name of the client, the country, you've really got to be doing something to catch your eye?
Well, in the PR category, I guess there's a couple points to make there. There's been a debate in some parts of the PR industry whether we should even be at Cannes, because they see it as an advertising-driven festival. The competition is skewed towards ad agencies, and I can tell you unequivocally that isn't true. Of the 20 jury members, 18 were from PR agencies, and 2 were from integrated agencies and very well versed in PR. So if there was a bias, an inherent bias, it was towards easily identifiable PR entries. So I guess that's kind of one point. A second point is that we intentionally didn't exclude work that had a paid element, because we felt like in the real world, client work is going to have a paid element, it's going to have an earned element, it might have an owned element. So we wanted work that was multidisciplinary and multi-channel, but it had to have as its primary delivery mechanism either a shared or earned element to it. So even the work that was entered by ad agencies still had to have an earned or shared element to it, and had to be driven by that. So if we were losing to ad agencies, we were losing to ad agencies who were doing PR better than we are. So I guess my advice is you're not going to be competing just with other PR companies. You will be competing with ad agencies, and sometimes they have a more sophisticated way of getting to the point faster.
But I guess we were talking earlier, in the real world, you're finding yourself pitching against creative agencies, ad agencies anyway.
Yeah, that's the real world too. So the best idea, best execution of the best idea is what works.
All, yeah. So it's same level, same playing field. In terms of what you see as the most prestigious of all the awards, is it a Lion, winning a Lion?
Well, I said boldly to you earlier, I think the Cannes Lions are the one competition that we, as an industry, we need to be in. I would urge your agencies to take it seriously, and I think it's probably the most motivational for at least for our people to win. Now, I know there are lots of other great competitions, and I don't mean to disparage any of them, but this is global. This celebrates creativity. It's probably the best microcosm of the competitive environment that we're in. Our clients notice it more than any other competition. And the work, and I really urge you, take a look at the Cannes Lion website, look at the case studies you're about to hear. It's inspiring, and I promise you, you're going to see something that you wish your agency had done, that you personally had something to do with.
I think during judging, you were tweeting when you got a break during all that intensity, and I think you said you estimated about half of all the campaigns you saw drove activity via Twitter and Facebook. Is it worth just talking about that sort of social media element as well, and how that's really grown? Yeah,
I think 5 years ago you would probably struggle to find a winner that had any sort of major social element to it. I would say half the winners didn't just have a social element, they were driven on a social platform, and I'm sure that proportion will creep up this year. And I think that too kind of reflects reality in the way our business is going. So campaigns that are traditionally focused, I think still have a place at a competition like Cannes, but I don't even know how I'd define traditional anymore. I think programs that are campaigns that are socially driven are going to be the ones that continue to win.
We did have quite a few questions actually, people asking that, whether you needed to have a very strong social element. So
to win at Cannes, you have to have a strong social element, and I think that's true in all categories at Cannes.
Okay. Now, there's something new happening this year at Cannes that you wanted to talk about that's just being announced this morning, I hear.
Yeah, actually, I think it was 20 minutes ago. So at Cannes Lion, the main part of the competition are these case studies that are entered, and I think there are 29 categories, I think 13 major competitions, each with about 20 to 30 elements to them. But a separate part of the competition are what they call the Young Lions, and these are mostly professionals under the age of 30, in some cases, what I'm about to say, under the age of 28. Agency teams are invited to take a brief. They qualify nationally and then compete globally at Cannes. To take a brief, usually from an NGO or charity, they're given 24 hours to solve it with a PR solution in this case, and they present that to a panel of judges. For the first year, Cannes will have a Young PR Lions competition. It'll be run through 30 national competitions. The International Communications Consultancy Organization, which is the parent group to PRCA here and in the sister groups around the world, will sponsor these competitions locally and sponsor the event at Cannes. And for me, it's a great opportunity to showcase the raw talent of the PR industry. My personal motive is to have the young talent drag the old talent like me into the future and show that we can compete on a global setting with anyone.
So if people want more information about that, I'm just looking at the press release here.
If you go to the Cannes Lion website, they should have their press release up, and EcoPR, was probably tweeting about it now, has on their website as well. So take a look at it.
Good stuff. Anything else you want to add for the moment?
Well, maybe during the Q&A you can challenge me on some of the notions or ideas you have about Cannes, but I do think it's the place we need to be as an industry. Not just my agency, I hope all agencies will take it seriously. And I'd like you to enter your work with some confidence. I did go to all the ceremonies. I saw all the other work that won in the other categories. None of it was remarkably better than ours. In fact, most of it wasn't as good as ours. So, we're there with the best in the world, and I just want us to hold our chin up and be a little more self-confident when we go into these things.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, David.